This is Essays and IPAs, presented by CDI Studios.
All right. Thank you, everybody, once again for joining us for Essays and IPAs. I'm your de facto, apparently, host, Michael Colonno, the AVP of Data Center Solutions. Thank you guys for joining us. Once again, we have...
I'm Kyle Mullin, Vice President of Solutions Architecture at CDI.
And our resident jester. I am Rob Owen, the Chief Architect / Pontificator of CDI. I'm happy to be here again with you two gentlemen.
The CPO, Chief Pontificating Officer.
It's a blessing to be back.
It is. A little colder outside, but that's okay. So last time we kind of finished up kind of setting the stage for leadership, right? And we're huge on leadership here at CDI in general, especially our team. Partially, Rob's kind of instilled that to us or on us. But really, it's about how do you lead in every direction. It's not just people reporting to you; it's your peers, it's your customers. Like Rob will kind of go, family. If you're married, if you have kids, if you have friends and aunts, uncles, whatever, right? It's that kind of sphere of influence. My big thing is like I'll kind of like we were telling stories last time. My big thing when I was an engineer is a lot of engineers start off with they have that one resume bullet that they think defines them, right? It's their you said you were one of the first VCPs, right? Like I said, the last time I dropped that I was a CCNP, and you said you did Microsoft stuff, right? So
you said you didn't have any certifications.
I know. I mean, I don't have any active. I don't know, but who knows? But along those lines, like what engineers tend to find that thing they think they're good at that defines their resume, and they hold on to that and they don't share it with anybody, right? Yeah. But the problem is they don't realize that actually makes them the go-to person for a bad reason. So you get that weekend phone call. So for me, leadership was. I started at my last job, should I say my last company, I started a newsletter. Basically, I kept up very, very highly. I kept up with blogs and posts and RSS feeds and things like that. I pruned through all that stuff and did a bi-weekly newsletter to everybody on my team because I thought the sooner I'm not the only one that knows something, the sooner I can make it somebody else's problem, kind of thing, right? So like to me, that was my first kind of like sphere of influence or my first kind of way to lead. And I think that's important. I think people should understand that making people better around you means that not only does it free you up for other things, but it also, allows everybody to genuinely get better and you earn respect, right?
For sure.
Yeah. For me, like what you're saying is like you really boil that down to scale, right? So sometimes the best individual contributor gets kind of hung up on this idea that they have this thing that makes them really special, right? So if I go and teach somebody how I do the thing, and that's like kind of one side of it, and the other side is, well, it'll take me just as long to teach somebody else how to do this thing as it will be to do myself, right? Both of those things are like the death knell of leadership at scale, right? And it's, I think, you guys hear me talk about this all the time, like scale and brand are two very, very important things as it relates to leadership. And I'd reiterate what you said before, that leadership isn't something you kind of wake up and turn on and off, right? When you're a real true student of leadership and you're looking for, how do I build not only my own individual brand, but the brand of those around me? What does that lead to? It leads to scaling what you do, which actually gives you peace of mind. And it stops you from being the one person that everybody goes to for everything, right? And
yes.
I always just joke around, like, I can only be in one place at, I can be in wherever you want me to be, but I can only be in one place at a time, right?
Yes.
And with especially with you guys over the years, we've really scaled that down to the point where now you guys went through that same cycle where people would fight over you guys to be everywhere all at once, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've kind of pushed that scale and brand down throughout the rest of the organization. So that's not just something that we hold on to, right? We're happy to see our peers, people that we work for on the teams get better and take on that responsibility, which then leads to the scale and brand of the actual organization, right?
Yep.
You can't be an organization that's growing at kind of the pace we are without enabling that scale through the
Well, it can't be an organization of one. I mean, that's the thing is like at the same time, we've definitely, I've done that in previous companies as well as here. Like, you you find something that works well and you try to oversell that one thing, but there's, a couple pivotal people that are part of that, right?
Yeah.
And how does that scale? It's a cycle that kind of gets weird in terms of overselling that thing, but it's a person. Person represents that.
I think we do a really good job of that here, right?
We definitely do now, yes.
Right, and embracing the culture that we instill here at CDI and kind of doing our best to lead individuals in that regard. But I think we also do a very good job at meeting people where they are, right, and working with them, make sure it's a collaborative effort with everybody in the team to ensure that. I don't want to use the word infighting, right? But we're all working together towards the same goal at the end of the day. And everybody understands
it's camaraderie.
Everybody understands the assignment, right? Everybody's working towards the same goal, right? Everybody's owning that goal. And it's almost like a no man left behind type, methodology. Right?
If people out there are kind of doing the work, if you will, and this is not just like a business argument. Like you can bring this into every facet of your life. Every relationship you have, right? Like if everybody's working and understands what the mission of that thing is, they're going to be much more, willing to put in the time, effort, and kind of like help each other to get to that end goal. If people don't understand what the mission is,
right?
You're going to have what you described before, right? Like you're going to have infighting. You're going to have people jockeying for position, and that's counterproductive to the overall kind of scale and brand of the organization.
So something that stuck with me that you kind of always go through, Rob, is the Halloween masks that you kind of go through, and it's like why that. I think we should show the. It's not an easy button. It's a bruh. So something. Why I say that is because I think with leading people, whether it's talking to a customer, whether it's helping a coworker, whatever it is, the faster you understand who they are and how they absorb information or how they can be influenced.
It's meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. And if one of the things that I remember you saying to me is there's there's only so many personalities, right? Just like Halloween mask, you kind of went through that there's like a ghost, a vampire, a witch, and X, right? And learning in a room, if you're talking to people, you're presenting things like that. There's usually that one person that's very technical. There's someone that's very business.
The stump the chump guy.
Exactly. And
it's not me.
It's definitely not you.
And you have to decide, how you portray what you're talking to earn each personality's respect, right? And it's the same thing with employees. So if it's your coworkers or like us, we have people reporting to us. It's understanding what they need and how their personalities perceive things that you say to actually lead them to get better.
Yeah. It's accelerating that timeline too, right? So the quicker you build your awareness, right? So we're talking a little bit about two different things, right? We're talking about what are people's personality types really?
Sure.
And the Halloween mask theory is one of them. Like there's only so many of them in the world, right? So the faster you build the awareness to what they are and how they're going to interact with your own mask, right? Who you are, right? And at times people can throw on a different one, like variations, if you will, like different superheroes as an example. But the quicker you build your awareness, not only to your own kind of personality type, the types of other kind of people
I think you're supposed to be looking at us. Sorry.
Align with are
what superhero are you?
I don't know.
What are you?
Which Halloween mask are you?
What do you guys think I am? I'm a Disney princess.
You're a Disney princess.
Yeah.
You're Belle.
I'm Belle. I'm
I don't
the Belle.
He's got tattoos.
I'm probably more like the teacup than I am.
You're definitely
Yeah,
a teacup.
That's true.
This beer is terrible.
Short and
It's
stout.
really bad.
I asked beforehand. That's not very nice.
Hold on, he didn't finish his thought here. I'm sorry.
did.
I
He did.
interrupted you, my little.
Well,
princess.
we were both smiling to each other.
Really what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? You really boil it down. We're talking about awareness, right? And the sooner you build your own awareness to your own strengths and weaknesses and those around you that you're influencing on a daily basis, the better outcome you will have, right? And I see this, and I think this is a widely known statistic, right? Most people leave their jobs because they don't like leadership, right?
True.
They don't have a clear understanding of the mission. They don't have clear direction from the person they, quote unquote, report to. And the person they report to probably views them as their employees and not working for them, right?
Sure.
So the minute you take on that mindset of building your awareness, understanding who you're working with, and we've seen it. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that can be top performers, but they're toxic to be around, right? And you can turn those people around once you make them realize that they're part of a bigger thing, right? They understand the mission, they respect the people around them, and then you teach them they're in a position of leadership as well, whether they have people reporting to them or not.
And there's upside, there's goals, there's challenges, right? And you enable them to, leverage their skill sets and get wider and learn new things and adapt and change, right? And I think,
so hold on,
that's what we do a good job at.
But hold on. So let's take a pause. Rob, you've been in a leadership position by title, for a longer period than Kyle and myself, right? So, Kyle, especially, because the CRN article came out, you're a rising star.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you're part of a constellation now or what happens exactly.
I'm in the Milky Way.
But like along those lines, so you and myself have risen through the ranks pretty quickly, right? And what do you think now that you've had to learn some of these soft skills as well as developmental skills that whether you've learned from Rob or other things, like what do you think is something that's good for people to know on how to develop themselves, or how have you used any techniques to develop others?
I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think we covered it already. Like, I think Rob is spot on with the awareness, right? Self-awareness.
You don't need to build his ego, but thank you.
It's already built
I'm the
up.
teacup.
That's right. A little teacup is right? Like, it's being awareness, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, surrounding yourself with people, to plug those gaps, right? And I think we've built, again, this culture where we are co-creating, collaborating continuously, and it's no man left behind. It's change or die, and we're working together again towards that same goal. So that's, and I think, CDI, I've been fortunate, right? I mean, we have a lot of people at this organization that have been here for 14, 15, 20, 25 plus years, right? And, they were instrumental in my growth, right, at this company. I still work with people on my team that have been here for 22 plus years, right? And, there was no ill will there. There was no hard feelings, and everybody was just like, hey, everybody embraced it, right, together. And because of that, I think we're great, to be honest.
Good. Okay. No,
it's cultural, right? So you have to drive the cultural belief in the mission, and then once you have that, the kind of mass effect happens, right? Where if everybody's believes in what's going on, right, and the fact that they can grow themselves, right? That's a big part of it, right? The minute people stop believing that there's any, like, if they believe they're on a hamster wheel every single day, it's really hard to get people to outperform where they were before.
Well, so let's take that for a second. So one of the things that I know we're huge at here, but I think is kind of a thing for anybody, no matter, once again, if you're working at a customer, whether you're at a vendor, whomever, but that's huge at CDI. That's very frustrating in terms of like kind of what you said is acting as if, right? Which CDI is huge on. The three of us are huge on. It's acting as if you already have X position, as if you already have X knowledge, all those different things. It's kind of empowering yourself and those around you to kind of lead into that position before you actually get it. Now, why I say it's frustrating is because whether it's pay, whether it's responsibilities, whether it's your calendar, it's very difficult to kind of take that ownership and really understand that, like, you're doing these things without being asked. And there might not be someone that's literally even measuring, what's actually going on, right? It's really you building your kind of like internal resume and your personal resume to possibly one day get whatever this is, right?
For the record, I measure everything.
Okay.
There's nothing, no stone left unturned.
Okay, well, I have a spreadsheet, so. But I mean, that's tough, right? I mean, that's really tough to do a job that you haven't been asked to do and that you're literally not being paid for, right?
But that's true in every thing, right?
But not everybody's like that, and that's the thing is like, but how, like, it's sometimes how you build that drive, that goal setting for yourself.
You're talking about mentorship a little bit.
Well, I think it's, so hopefully, I mean, I think all three of us are huge on, I think, having a mentor, whether they're in the industry or not, right?
100%.
But and I think it's, it could be anybody. It could be like your brother, your friend, whatever, somebody to kind of be a sounding board, right?
Honestly, that's a good thing. It's a particularly good exercise to go through with anybody who's kind of like struggling with it, who doesn't really understand it. Like, my own leadership coach, which you guys, Jim Ravilla, who we've all used in the past here at CDI, one of the first exercises he had me do years ago was make a list. Like, who
are your heroes?
Who are your heroes? Who are your mentors, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually harder to do than you'd think. And the list doesn't necessarily really matter at the end of the day. It's the exercise of like thinking through the why.
Right, the qualities that they possess that you admire and you want to work
I just
towards.
wrote Rob Owen over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else.
I think
I can't speak for them.
I think you're
But
45 on my list.
I'm
Will.Huber at CDILLC.com.
I put Bart Simpson, Rob Owen.
And the
but- But yeah, I mean, I think that's all right. So he's picking it up. So I might as well mention
This is horrendous.
that's not nice. I don't appreciate that
not a
kind of
sour
language
guy.
around here.
It's
So
very
he's not.
tart.
So he's not. So it is. So I'll tell you what this is. Our CTO lives
You
really
like
close to
sour
me. He knows this brewery as well. It's Fort Nonsense. It comes out every year around Thanksgiving, which is when I got it. So
It's a year old.
Yes, that's disgusting.
That's why it's not good.
No, no.
Sours don't really go bad like that.
no, they don't.
They kind of ferment.
So anyway, it's a cranberry sour IPA. So I will tell you, with Thanksgiving dinner, it goes phenomenal. It's supposed to be.
Yeah,
Dessert?
It's actually pretty good.
Is it a dessert drink?
No, it's supposed to just like a nice hard alcohol might cut through the grease and whatever. Imagine.
Like when you're eating a real greasy steak.
Exactly. Oh, you haven't had like a
Drinking
nice
avocado oil.
old fashioned or something like that with exactly. Well, if you've this year I'm deep frying the turkey, so
Drink the oil afterwards.
I'll drink the oil,
Cut through with it.
mainline the oil.
But
yeah, so
cranberry.
So it's a
sour.
cranberry sour. It's supposed to be tart. It's supposed to be like a little bit biting, a little bit
It's
drying.
definitely biting.
It's supposed to be. Imagine you're having that turkey dinner. You got stuffing, got everything else. It cuts straight through that. It's good. I like it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it for me. I still think it's a 0 of 10.
I think I'd rate it a little higher than the 0.
4?
Well, coming from someone that drinks like Michelob
I'm not
Ultra,
gonna lie,
you know.
like for me, it's the cranberry. I'm not a huge cranberry fan.
Okay, that's
to begin
fair.
with. Now, as it relates to a sour and how well it's put together, it's
sour.
better than a 4 or a 0. It's probably a 7 on the scale of quality of a sour.
Okay.
I'm not a huge cranberry fan.
I will
It
say
makes me think of eating
I've never
first
drank in
rate.
it. I've never drank it. I've never drank it
Were you pre-gaming
with I've never drank it without a meal. So it is very tart. I will say that. But
If you'd brought
I
like a
won't
nice
listen to your
display
opinion.
of,
You like light
maybe we had
beer.
turkey sandwiches or something to go with it, it probably would have been better.
oh, nice!
That's
Like one of those like
for the next
Thanksgiving
episode.
wraps.
We're gonna have Thanksgiving leftovers.
There we
We're
go.
gonna have Thanksgiving leftovers for the next episode.
I appreciate
Maybe
it.
a nice
I like
meat
it.
and cheese plate, Mike.
A
What's
crudité, a charcuterie board.
Charcuterie board.
Nice, very nice,
I would like a charcuterie board.
very nice. Well, I'll get right on that. So the last thing I want to kind of talk about is how do you get your information to basically be able to raise yourself up, to broaden your knowledge, to broaden your team's knowledge, to be able to speak intelligently to those you're not necessarily selling to, but you're trying to influence, whether it is internal, external, sideways, whatever, customers, right? You have to be knowledgeable. So how is it certifications? Is it blogs? Is it webinars? Is it conferences? Is it everything, which is a lot of very time consuming? Like what, or should I say, what's your go-to?
So for me, I know this is a really simple answer. There is so much out there, right? There's blogs, there's movies, there's videos, there's people who make a living regurgitating leadership, right? And at the end of the day, you could go read 40 books on leadership, and they're all say roughly the same thing with different little spin or semantics that they use to get to that endpoint, right? So to me, if you really want to go down this path and you want to become a better leader in your personal life and in business, you have to find the person who speaks your language, right? You have to find that person who you have some respect for, and what they're saying resonates with you in how you feel and your awareness of yourself. And then once you do that, you should almost throw away everything that they've ever done, right? Like read it, consume it, understand it, but don't
make it yours.
Yeah, you have to kind of find your own spin on it, and that's where the branching out from that space is. But the first step in my mind is you got to find somebody who really speaks to you, right?
Yeah.
Like you gravitate towards, and you can really absorb the information, because what you're going to find then, if you really become a good student of leadership, every book you read, you end up doing this. You're like, yep.
Seen it before.
Yeah, because there's overlap.
They're all the same, right?
Yeah.
What frustrates me is when people say they've read a load of leadership books, but don't actually implement any of the things they've read, right?
Sure.
So they can regurgitate all of the different ways to spin different ways of thinking about leadership, but then their actions don't actually align with
practice what they preach.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you: is there, before we move on to Kyle, is there a particular author that you've kind of gravitated towards?
I think everybody knows. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink and the whole concept of extreme ownership. But like once I read the first book, which I read cover to cover, and I've gone back to many, many times, his subsequent books are regurgitations of his own.
They are
first.
They are
kind of lead at it, and I was like, it's not like
dichotomy of leadership is
and
very
I'll
good.
Probably keep buying his books as they come out. But and I've bought his children's books and I've read some of them to my kids and stuff like that. But just the concept of extreme ownership resonated with me, and he's a big, tough kind of Navy SEAL guy, and I like I gravitated towards his messaging and his storytelling. And what really kicked it off for me with him was his TED Talk, which is like I think it's less than 10 minutes. It's like 7 minutes long, and he tells a story. And I'm big on storytelling, so as he went through that story, you could tell like. He's giving you everything he's got in that 7 minutes. And then I read his book and after that, I've now read, more than I can count. But like I said, I don't spend a lot of time studying different versions of that anymore. What I try now to do is remind myself to act as if, like we talked about before, and really practice it, right? Like, and that's what it comes down to. You got to find your own path. It's not about emulating someone else exactly. Right? It's finding out what the concepts are, finding somebody who tells you the story in a way you can consume, but then you have to go and do it, right? And you have to go practice. And it's okay to not be right all the time, right? Like, it's like when you have kids or you even have a dog. Like, training a dog is leadership. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but like, if you don't train the dog and be consistent with how you do it, you're not going to have a good dog. Like, your friends aren't going to want to come over. Dog's going to jump all over them and bark and bite them. Like. Nobody wants that, right? It's that's the simplest way to look at it, but it's true in every way you go.
So I'm gonna kick it over to Kyle, but I do want to say what kind of a footnote for us for either to talk about a little bit more today or maybe the next episode is failure, right? Extreme ownership is also about how you fail, how you move from failure, right, and how you handle that failure, right, and owning that. So let's kind of take a pause on that, but let's move over to Kyle in terms of, it doesn't have to be just leadership. It could just be IT in general in terms of knowledge, how you keep up with it.
Yeah, I was a little confused. I think we took a little turn there, but that's okay.
But it's both.
You're right. That's what the chief pontificator does.
I messed that up.
No, I don't think you messed anything up. I think I agree with all your points.
Maybe I misunderstood the conversation.
You're spot on, right?
But at the same time, you are mostly, you still keep up with technology, obviously. You're still pivotal in a lot of conversations, but at the same time, more of your role at this point is leadership, right? Growing myself, growing the team. So that should be genuinely more of it. Where Kyle's and myself is both. It's a kind of that massaging of positions as well as the technology itself and kind of grooming the next leaders, right? So for
very generous way to say he's not technical any longer.
It was very generous, and
you can only spend so many hours. You don't spend so many hours a day.
And you know what? That brings me to my next. To answer your question directly, a wise person at CDI, who will remain nameless, once told me, all I do every night is watch 20 minutes of YouTube videos.
Okay.
On a topic of interest, variate it night to night, 5 days a week, pick up tidbits along the way.
Sure.
Shavings make a pile.
Shavings make a pile. And I was like, wow, that is like, I'm on the couch after 8:30, 9 o'clock every night watching TV. Might as well watch a YouTube video, 20 minutes on a various topic, SASE, SD, whatever the hell it is. That's not in my current, I don't want to call it wheelhouse, because I don't never say I'm a subject matter expert in anything, but like in an area of interest, let's put it that way, right?
Yes. So something that's relevant to the field.
Right. And the other thing, going back to the topic of meeting people where they are, right? I am a big believer in making relationships and keeping relationships with the people who are implementing, from a CDI perspective, implementing the projects that I am designing and selling.
Completely.
Right. So when I do a design, we sell a deal, we complete the project, I go back to the consultant and I say, hey, how do we do first and foremost, right? Any gotchas, anything I should know about in the future? What's your opinion on this? It's a feedback loop, right? So I like to think that, I do that, and that's very helpful for me for future opportunities, because I could say when a customer is asking me in a deal, like, anything I got to be thinking about, right? And
there might be that one asterisk that you learned from whatever, and you look like you're smart.
Yeah, so reading, blogs, whatever the hell it is, LinkedIn, videos, whatever we're doing, right? In addition to the 20 minutes of YouTube and the feedback loop with our people, the feet on the street who are actually doing the, the delivery of these projects. That's where, I feel like is the most value.
And then honestly, like the last thing I think, which we're doing it right now, like this constantly sharing of ideas with your peers and like talking about leadership. Like I don't
literal
see
roundtable
people talking about it. I see a lot of people, getting up and professing things at times, but like talking about it with not only your peers, but like people who are interested in learning, like listening and talking about what your beliefs are and what theirs are and comparing notes, like that's how you get better, right? You gotta constantly be a student of this. It's not, you don't just learn it and then you're like, all right, I'm done. Like it's a constantly evolving thing. And
I'll say I'm somewhere in the middle of you two. I do a little bit of both. I listen to books on tape type of thing. I miss reading physical paper, but with life, kids, work, whatever, right? It's harder these days, but windshield time is a real thing, and listening to podcasts and books definitely helps. But I definitely like listening to some leadership books. And even one of the reasons why I like this kind of format we have here is it's tough. A lot of them are very sales oriented, right? Or they're very like large corporation oriented. But still, like you said, taking little tidbits. But at the same time, like you said, what I like to do is, there's no limit of webinars and things like that. I think during COVID, everybody kind of got OD'd on that type of format. But one of the things I like to do is like, if I'm sitting there for too long on like some sort of social media platform, why can't I be thumbing through blogs? At the same time, like I have an app that has all kinds of, blogs that I've added to it over the years. And I just kind of swipe
What app is that for your audience?
Feedly.
Feedly. But what you're talking about is like the concept of the diamond in the rough, right? Like there's a lot of rough, and to find the tidbits in each one of those things makes it valuable use of your time.
Well, that's the thing I thumb through, and whether it's like to you, I try to add things that are diverse. I want like an SD-WAN article. I want like all these different aspects, right? And it's kind of going through there and seeing what I find interesting that I think I can find a nugget from. Because like you said, shavings, like what can I find that little knowledge nugget from that would give me value in a conversation? Because I think also at our level, we're in very strategic, high level conversations where you need a broad spectrum. You're not that SME.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important for also people to understand that getting deeper in your field is also good and it's okay. There's plenty of room in our industry in terms of being an SME.
Sure.
So like, people need to understand that you're just a generalist. If you are that super technical person in a particular area, you can be that. And that's even like,
and it's necessary.
Well, think of, the perfect example is I like to think of as CDI has hit that critical threshold where not everybody needs to be a generalist anymore.
Right.
We literally have towers made up of specialists that know technologies, right? We have security people, we have SD-WAN and VDI and like all these different aspects that now people can literally gravitate towards what they love. They're not forced to learn something that like, well, I don't want to learn another storage array. So it's the same thing goes.
It's opportunity of like, educational path. And it's technology based, it's leadership based. There's a lot of aspects to it.
Yeah, and I think it all kind of circles up in terms of understanding that deepening your knowledge, no matter what it is important. Understanding how to portray that information to everybody else is important. I think failures, and I think also how you portray and storytell, I think is another thing we should probably talk about in an episode, is not just pontificating for the sake of it, not just giving super detailed information, but
a student. Always be a student.
Yeah.
And that's not a skill that everybody has, right? That takes time and
no.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do leadership, you got to teach people how to be students, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a good leader, you're also a student.
And tell stories and how to tell stories. And that's the thing. So I think let's
never buy this beer again. It was horrendous.
Cheers.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
Cheers. Yeah, so definitely thanks everybody once again for joining for essays and IPAs. I think next time we'll go over a little bit of, once again, how to handle failures, a little bit of how you do some storytelling and get people's buy-in and what you're saying to them. But thanks again. Appreciate it.
Essays and IPAs is a production of CDI Studios, hosted by Michael Colonno, Rob Owen, and Kyle Mullin, and is produced by Alyssa Hall and Spencer Grogan. To learn more about CDI, you can visit cdillc.com.